My name is Olivia Chen, and 6 months ago, I watched my parents fill out job applications at the hostess stand of Terroir, my award-winning restaurant that now has a 3-month waiting list. The same parents who, 7 years earlier, had changed. The locks on our family home because my career as a mere waitress embarrassed them in front of their country club friends. Life has a way of serving the most unexpected dishes, doesn't it? And sometimes, the people who were so quick to disown, you end up depending on you for their livelihood. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I grew up as the only child of Raymond and Victoria Chen, two proud immigrants who arrived in America with nothing but their determination and my father's engineering degree. By the time I was born, Dad had already secured a senior position at Westwood Technologies, and Mom had established herself as one of the top real estate agents in our affluent suburban community of Glenbrook Estates. Our 2-story colonial house, with its manicured lawn and 3-car garage, stood as a monument to what they called the American dream achieved through proper planning and education. Education was the centerpiece of our family values, or more accurately, the particular type of education my parents prescribed. Piano lessons beginning at age 4, advanced mathematics courses by 5th grade, Mandarin Chinese on weekends, summer, academic enrichment programs instead of camp. My childhood photo album reads like a catalog of academic achievements: science fair champion, mathlete regional winner, national merit scholar. Your father and I sacrificed everything to give you opportunities, Mom would remind me regularly. All we ask is that you make use of them with a respectable career. In the Chen family lexicon, respectable had a very specific definition: doctor, lawyer, engineer, or at the very least, a business executive with a corner office. Anything else was considered failure, a waste of our family's hard-earned status. My senior year of high school arrived with early acceptance letters from 3 Ivy League universities. My parents hosted an elaborate dinner party to celebrate, inviting their closest friends and colleagues to witness their parenting triumph. Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, Dad announced over dessert, his voice carrying that distinctive blend of pride and smugness. Olivia will be studying pre-med, of course. It was the first I'd heard of this decision. Later that night, I approached them in Dad's home office where they were reviewing the financial aid packages. I was thinking about majoring in business, or perhaps hospitality management, I ventured cautiously. Mom's fountain pen froze mid-signature. Hospitality management? She said the words as if they tasted bitter. You mean, like, hotels? Or restaurants? I've always been interested in food service and— Absolutely not, Dad interrupted, setting down his reading glasses. We didn't work this hard for you to end up in service. Medicine is a respectable profession. You'll thank us later. That night established the pattern that would define the next 4 years. I would express an interest. They would dismiss it. I would suggest an alternative path. They would redirect me to medicine. The implicit threat always hung in the conversation: their financial support, which paid for everything from tuition to housing to my meal plan, depended on my compliance. So I complied, outwardly. I enrolled as a pre-med student at Harvard, suffered through organic chemistry, shadowed physicians during summer breaks, and maintained the GPA my scholarships required. But I also took elective courses in business management, culinary arts, and food anthropology. I worked weekend shifts at a local cafe near campus, falling in love with the rhythm of food service, the choreography of a busy breakfast rush, the satisfaction of creating perfect latte art, the genuine human connections formed over a well-prepared meal. By my senior year, I knew medicine wasn't my path. The hospital environments that were supposed to inspire me left me feeling drained instead. Meanwhile, my part-time job at Brasserie Lumière, an upscale French restaurant in Cambridge, energized me even after double shifts. I'd worked my way up from food runner to server, absorbing everything I could about restaurant operations along the way. When Chef Marcel, the owner, offered me a full-time position after graduation as a server with management training, it felt like opportunity knocking. The salary wouldn't compare to medicine, but the restaurant included staff meals, health insurance, and most importantly, a path toward the career I actually wanted. Telling my parents would be the hard part. I waited until after graduation, when we were back at our family home, my diploma safely secured. I prepared a detailed presentation, complete with financial projections, a 5-year career plan, and testimonials from successful restaurateurs who had started as servers. I believed that if I approached this like one of Dad's business proposals, they might see the logic in my decision. I was wrong. A waitress? Mom's voice had risen to a pitch I'd rarely heard. After Harvard? After everything we've done? It's more than just waiting tables, I tried to explain. It's a management track position. In 3 years, I could be... Do you have any idea what we'll tell people? Dad cut in. What will Dr. Lin say when he asks about medical school and... We have to tell him our Harvard graduate is carrying plates for tips. This isn't about Dr. Lin, I said, feeling my carefully practiced calm beginning to fray. It's about my career, my life. Your life that we made possible, Mom countered. Your education that we paid for, your opportunities that we sacrificed for. The argument circled for hours. When logic failed, they tried guilt. When guilt proved ineffective, they moved to threats. If you pursue this waitressing, Dad finally said, his voice eerily calm, you do it without our support, financial or otherwise. You don't mean that, I said, though the set of his jaw suggested otherwise. We do, Mom affirmed. We've invested too much in you to watch you throw it all away. If you want to waste your potential, you won't do it, as our daughter. They gave me a week to come to my senses. 7 days to decide between the life they had planned and the one I wanted. 7 days that I spent mostly in my childhood bedroom, alternating between anger, guilt, and doubt. Had I been selfish in pursuing my own interests? Was I being naive about career prospects in the restaurant industry? Was family approval worth sacrificing personal fulfillment? On the 7th day, I emerged with my decision. I had accepted the position at Brasserie Lumiere. I would drive to Boston the following morning. Then you should pack everything you need, Mom said coldly, because once you leave, this will no longer be your home. I thought she was bluffing, that parental love would eventually overcome disapproval. I was wrong about that too. 3 months into my new job, I drove back to Glenbrook for my cousin's wedding. I hadn't been formally uninvited, though my parents had stopped taking my calls or responding to my texts. When I arrived at our family home to change before the ceremony, my key no longer worked in the lock. Through the decorative glass panels, I could see that my childhood photos had been removed from the entryway wall. I called Mom from the driveway. After 4 rings, she answered. We told you our conditions, she said without preamble. You chose your path. You changed the locks? My voice sounded small even to myself. We've put your remaining personal items in storage. I'll text you the address and access code. Mom, this is... What will it look like to the Lins and the Yangs if our daughter is serving food while their children are completing medical residencies? She interrupted. You've made your choice. Now we're making ours. The line went dead. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, alternating between tears and disbelief. Eventually, I drove to a discount store, bought a simple black dress to replace the outfit I'd planned to wear from my closet, and attended my cousin's wedding solo. My parents acknowledged me with rigid politeness, but introduced themselves to my extended family's new in-laws without mentioning they had a daughter. I returned to Boston that night and threw myself into work with a new intensity. If my family rejected me for pursuing my passion, I would make that passion count for something extraordinary. I picked up extra shifts, volunteered for the most challenging stations, and asked Chef Marcel for additional responsibilities. I started a small notebook where I recorded everything I was learning. Not just service techniques, but food costs, vendor relationships, wine pairings, kitchen operations. My tiny studio apartment became a test kitchen during my off hours. I experimented with flavor combinations, practiced knife skills, and developed recipes that blended my Chinese heritage with the French techniques I was absorbing at work. I invited colleagues for tastings and critique, refining my palate and presentation skills with each attempt. When my lease ended 10 months into my Boston life, I made another decision. Chef Marcel had connections in New York City, where the restaurant scene offered more diversity and opportunity. He made a call to his friend Sophia at Ember, an upscale neighborhood bistro in Brooklyn that was developing a reputation for innovative food and exceptional service. "They need an experienced server," Marcel told me. "But Sophia says if you're as good as I claim, they might have assistant management opportunities within a year." I packed my few possessions into my 12-year-old Honda Civic and drove south, leaving behind the city where my parents had expected me to become a doctor for one where I hoped to become a restaurateur instead. New York proved both harder and more rewarding than I anticipated. My rent consumed nearly half my income. Competition for shifts was fierce. The pace was relentless. But Sophia recognized my hunger to learn every aspect of the business. She started giving me additional responsibilities: scheduling, other servers, training new staff, developing daily specials with the chef. "You have good instincts," she told me after I'd been there 6 months. "But more importantly, you have grit. This industry chews up talented people who can't handle the pressure. You seem to thrive on it." She was right. While the 12-hour shifts left my feet aching and my body exhausted, I felt intellectually and creatively stimulated in ways my pre-med studies never had. The constant problem-solving, the human psychology of creating memorable dining experiences, the blend of art and science in food preparation, it engaged every part of me. Still, I couldn't deny that my parents' rejection left a wound that wasn't healing. I sent birthday cards that received no acknowledgement. I emailed updates about my life that generated no response. I called on holidays only to reach their voicemail. After 2 years, I stopped trying. Instead, I channeled all my emotional energy into professional development. I took a weekend mixology course to improve my beverage knowledge. I enrolled in a part-time business class at NYU to strengthen my financial acumen. I saved every spare dollar toward my ultimate goal, a restaurant of my own. 3 years into my New York life, an unexpected opportunity emerged. Sophia's sister owned a small storefront property in a transitioning neighborhood of Brooklyn. The previous tenant, a cafe that had struggled to find its audience, was breaking their lease. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "The space needs work," Sophia told me over staff meal one afternoon. "But the kitchen. Equipment is included, and Nadia is willing to offer a good deal on rent for the first year if you're interested." My heart raced. "You think I'm ready?" Sophia shrugged. "Ready? Who knows? This industry is always a gamble. But you've got the skills, you understand food costs, and you've saved some money. Plus, you have something most first-time restaurant owners don't. What's that? You know what it's like to be staff. You'll build loyalty because you've been where they are. That's invaluable." That night, I couldn't sleep. I reviewed my savings, $42,000 painstakingly accumulated over 4 years. Not nearly enough to launch a restaurant properly, but perhaps enough for a scaled-down concept if I did most of the work myself. I'd need investors or loans for the rest. The following week, I visited the space. At just 200 square feet, it was small by restaurant standards, but the layout was efficient. The kitchen needed updating but had functional basics. The dining area could seat about 40 guests comfortably. Most importantly, large windows faced a small park, providing natural light and a pleasant view. both rarities in affordable New York. Restaurant spaces. I spent the next month developing a business plan, creating sample menus, and calculating startup costs. I approached 3 banks for small business loans and was rejected by all of them. Too risky, they said. Restaurants have a high failure rate, they reminded me. Insufficient collateral, they concluded. Undeterred, I revised my approach. I reached out to regular customers at Ember who had financial means and had commented on my service over the years. I prepared a detailed investor presentation that outlined my concept. Terroir, a restaurant celebrating immigrant food stories through seasonal, locally sourced ingredients. Each dish would honor cultural heritage while embracing contemporary techniques, creating what I called tradition translated for the modern palate. To my surprise, 2 customers agreed to invest $30,000 each in exchange for minority stakes. Sophia and her husband contributed another $20,000. With my savings and a high-interest small business credit line as backup, I had just enough to launch a stripped-down version of my vision. I signed the lease on my 28th birthday, 7 years, after my parents had changed their locks and removed my photos from their walls. As I held the keys to my own establishment, I felt a complex mix of pride, vindication, and lingering sadness. I wished they could see that my wasteful career choice had led to this moment of creation. The next 3 months disappeared into a blur of permits, renovations, menu development, and staff hiring. I painted walls myself to save money. I scoured restaurant supply auctions for affordable furniture. I developed relationships with local farmers and small-scale food producers who would become essential partners in my farm-to-table approach. Opening night arrived with the terrifying uncertainty all new restaurant owners face. Would anyone come? Would the food meet expectations? Would service run smoothly? Had I made a catastrophic mistake betting everything on this dream? By 7 p.m., every table was filled. By 8 p.m., we had a waiting list. By closing time, we had served 76 guests in our 40-seat restaurant, turning tables faster than I had dared to hope. More importantly, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Guests loved our signature dish, 5-spice duck with cherry glaze, a creation that honored my Chinese heritage while incorporating local Hudson Valley duck and seasonal cherries. The next day brought food critics from 2 local publications. The following week, a popular food blogger posted about our charred eggplant with black garlic and crispy shallots. Within a month, reservations required 2 weeks advance notice. I barely slept those first 6 months. I arrived at 7 a.m. to accept deliveries, worked on menu development until the staff arrived, managed service until closing, then stayed to review the day's numbers and prepare for tomorrow. On my rare day off, I visited farms and producers to strengthen relationships and discover new ingredients. The hard work paid dividends. By our first anniversary, Terroir had received a glowing review in the New York Times, been featured in Food and Wine's Restaurants to Watch, and expanded to include a small cocktail bar in the previously unused basement space. We had grown from 8 employees to 22. Our reservation list now stretched to 3 months. Success brought more than just financial reward. It validated the choice I had made 7 years earlier, the decision that had cost me my family but had forced me to discover my own resilience and creativity. The restaurant became my new family. My staff, many of whom had their own stories of pursuing dreams against expectations, understood me in ways my parents never had. Still, unexpected moments would trigger the old pain. When regular customers brought their parents to celebrate special occasions, when I overheard proud fathers bragging about their children's accomplishments, when Mother's Day and Father's Day brought families together at our tables while I worked alone. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 5 years when the economy began to show signs of trouble. News reports mentioned technology sector layoffs affecting senior executives like my father. The real estate market, my mother's domain, had cooled considerably with rising interest rates. I wondered occasionally how they were faring, but had no way of knowing We had no mutual connections since my extended family had chosen sides long ago, maintaining superficial politeness toward me, but real relationships with my parents. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, as I reviewed invoices in my small office, my hostess knocked tentatively on the door. "There's a couple here asking to speak with you," she said. "They don't have a reservation, and we're not open for another hour, but the woman. She says she's your mother." I felt the floor shift beneath me like the first tremor before an earthquake. After 5 years of silence, my parents had materialized at my restaurant, seeking me out directly. My mind raced through possible scenarios as I followed my hostess to the front entrance, each heartbeat pounding in my ears. They stood awkwardly by the host stand, looking simultaneously familiar and foreign. Dad had aged visibly, his once jet black hair now predominantly gray, his confident posture subtly diminished. Mom appeared thinner than I remembered. The designer clothing she had always worn with pride replaced by a simple blouse and slacks that seemed oddly unremarkable for a woman who had built her identity around external perfection. "Olivia," Mom said, her voice carrying that particular tone I recognized from childhood, the one that blended authority with uncertainty when facing situations beyond her control. "Mom, Dad." I nodded, my professional mask sliding into place, like armor. "This is unexpected." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, filled with 5 years of unspoken words and untended wounds. The three of us stood frozen in this tableau until my chef called from the kitchen, breaking the spell. "We should talk privately," I said, gesturing toward my office. "Please, follow me." They trailed behind as I led them through the dining room, past tables where countless families had celebrated milestones while mine had remained fractured, past the semi-open kitchen where my culinary team was prepping for lunch service, past the awards and framed reviews that documented my success in the career they had dismissed. My office was small but efficient, like everything else in the restaurant. I'd designed it with the same attention to detail I applied to our dining spaces: warm lighting, comfortable seating, and elements that reflected my philosophy of honoring tradition while embracing innovation. A vintage Chinese tea set shared space with modern design books. Family-style recipe cards inherited from my grandmother's collection were framed alongside contemporary food photography. "Please sit," I said, indicating the 2 chairs opposite my desk. I remained standing, needing the psychological advantage of height in this unexpected confrontation. "What brings you here after all this time?" They exchanged glances, that silent parental communication I remembered from childhood, before Dad cleared his throat. "Your restaurant. It's very impressive," he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "We read about it in the Times last year." The acknowledgement sent an unwelcome surge of pleasure through me, the child still seeking parental approval despite everything. I pushed the feeling aside. "Thank you. But I doubt you came all this way to compliment the decor." Mom's hands twisted in her lap, a nervous gesture I'd rarely seen from a woman who had always presented composed confidence to the world. "Olivia, we've come because—" she began, then faltered. "We need your help," Dad finished, the words seeming to physically pain him. Things have changed significantly since we last spoke. Over the next 30 minutes, they outlined the collapse of their carefully constructed life. Dad had indeed been laid off from Westwood Technologies 18 months earlier, a strategic reduction of senior personnel after the company was acquired by a multinational corporation. At 58, with technology evolving rapidly, he'd found himself competing against candidates with more current skills and lower salary requirements. Meanwhile, Mom's real estate business had suffered. As the market cooled and younger agents with digital marketing expertise captured what business remained, their investments, heavily weighted toward technology stocks on Dad's confident assurances, had lost significant value in the recent downturn. "We've had to sell the house," Mom said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "We're living in a two-bedroom apartment now in Millfield." Millfield was a modest community several steps down from Glenbrook's Prestige. "I see," I said, struggling to process this reversal of fortune. "I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties, but I'm not sure what you expect from me. You made your position quite clear 5 years ago." Dad's jaw tightened, that familiar expression of pride battling necessity. "We've been trying to rebuild. Victoria has been working part-time at an insurance office. I've taken some consulting work, but it's inconsistent. He hesitated, the word clearly foreign to his vocabulary. Struggling. A complicated blend of emotions swirled within me. Vindication, sympathy, resentment, and beneath it all, the persistent pull of familial connection despite everything. I waited, sensing there was more they hadn't yet revealed. "We saw your restaurant was hiring," Mom finally said. The positions were posted online, host staff and back-of-house positions. Understanding dawned with strange clarity. My parents hadn't come to reconcile or apologize. They had come seeking employment at the very establishment they had once dismissed as beneath their daughter's potential. "You want to work for me?" The question emerged more incredulously than I'd intended. Dad's face flushed. "Not permanently, of course. Just until we get back on our feet. The employment market is challenging for people our age." I felt an unexpected laugh bubble up, not of joy but of sheer absurdity. The universe had crafted an irony so perfect it bordered on cruelty. The parents who had disowned me for choosing restaurant work were now requesting restaurant jobs themselves. "What skills do you have that would benefit my establishment?" I asked, adopting the neutral tone I used when interviewing potential staff. The question clearly caught them off guard. They had anticipated either immediate rejection based on our history or automatic acceptance based on family obligation. My professional assessment was neither. "I managed a team of 20 engineers," Dad offered. "I understand organizational systems and efficiency protocols. And I've worked with high-end clientele for decades," Mom added. "I know how to create positive customer experiences." I nodded, considering their responses not as a daughter but as a business owner. The host position requires standing for 8-hour shifts, managing reservation systems you're unfamiliar with, and diffusing tense situations when tables aren't ready or special requests can't be accommodated. Back of house requires physical stamina, ability to take direction from chefs much younger than you, and comfort with a multicultural, multilingual environment. Their expressions reflected growing realization of what these jobs actually entailed. Like many people who have never worked in restaurants, they had underestimated the physical and psychological demands of the industry. "We're fast learners," Dad said, his engineer's confidence surfacing. "And we're motivated." The word hung in the air between us. Motivated, as I had been when they closed their door to me, as I had remained through years of 12-hour shifts, financial uncertainty, and building something from nothing without family support. I should have felt triumphant. The perfect revenge scenario had landed in my lap without effort, the opportunity to reject them as they had rejected me, to dismiss their capabilities as they had dismissed my chosen path. The symmetry was poetic. Yet looking at them, these proud people now humbled by circumstance, I felt no satisfaction in the prospect of retribution. Success had given me perspective that vengeance never could. "I have 2 positions that might suit your abilities," I said after a measured pause. "We need assistance with bookkeeping and vendor management, organizing invoices, tracking orders, maintaining our supply databases. And we're expanding our private dining program, which requires someone to coordinate with clients on event planning." Relief flickered across their faces, followed quickly by confusion. These weren't the frontline positions they had come to. request, but more administrative roles that acknowledge their professional backgrounds. The pay is standard for our industry, which means it's probably less than you're accustomed to, I continued. Hours can be irregular. The work isn't glamorous, but both positions are essential to our operation. You're offering us jobs? Mom asked cautiously. I'm offering you an opportunity, I clarified. Whether it becomes actual employment depends on your performance during a 2-week trial period, just like any other potential staff member. Dad straightened in his chair, professional dignity reasserting itself. When would you want us to start? Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. I have a restaurant to open for lunch service now. They rose awkwardly, clearly uncertain about how to conclude this unexpected negotiation. In the absence of personal reconciliation, we had established a potential professional relationship, a strange new territory for a family that had once operated only in absolutes. Thank you, Olivia, Mom said, her voice carrying a vulnerability I hadn't heard since early childhood. We appreciate the opportunity. I nodded, maintaining the professional distance that now felt safer than any attempt at personal connection. 9 a.m. Don't be late. After they left, I remained in my office for several minutes, allowing the emotions I had suppressed during our interaction to surface. Anger at their conditional love that had been withdrawn when I failed to meet their expectations. Hurt that even now, they had come seeking employment rather than reconciliation. Confusion about my own decision to offer them positions rather than the rejection they arguably deserved. Yet beneath these familiar feelings lay something unexpected, a certain freedom. Seeing them vulnerable had shifted something fundamental in our dynamic. Their approval, which had once seemed the essential currency of my worth, now represented just one perspective among many. Their judgment, which had once held the power to devastate, now carried only the weight I chose to give it. The lunch service, prep sounds filtering through my office door reminded me of more immediate responsibilities. Whatever complicated family dynamics were unfolding, I had a business to run. I pushed personal considerations aside and rejoined my team, channeling my energy into creating exceptional experiences for our guests. The following morning, I arrived at the restaurant at my usual early hour to find my parents already waiting, outside. They were 15 minutes early, a habitual punctuality I had inherited, and that had served me well in an industry where timing is everything. Good morning, I said, unlocking the door and disabling the alarm system. We'll start with a tour of the operation so you understand the overall flow before focusing on your specific responsibilities. I guided them through the restaurant with professional detachment, explaining systems and protocols as I would to any new employee. The kitchen, still quiet before the prep team arrived, the dining room with its carefully considered layout, the basement bar with its curated selection of small-batch spirits and house-made infusions, the back office where operational logistics were managed. My parents followed attentively, asking relevant questions that reflected their professional backgrounds, while revealing their unfamiliarity with restaurant-specific concerns. Dad was particularly interested in our inventory management system, immediately identifying efficiency improvements. Mom noted details about our reservation process, suggesting refinements based on her customer service experience. Their observations were actually valuable, fresh perspectives from individuals with transferable skills from different industries. Had they been strangers rather than the parents who had rejected my career choice, I would have been impressed by their quick grasp of our operational needs. You've created something remarkable here, Dad said as we completed the tour, genuine admiration in his voice. The systems integration alone is impressive. Your staff clearly respects you, Mom added, having observed my brief interactions with the prep team as they arrived. That's not easy to achieve. I acknowledged their comments with a nod, unwilling to reveal how much their professional validation affected me despite my best intentions. Let's discuss your specific responsibilities now, Over the next several hours, I trained them on the fundamentals of their trial positions. Dad would assist our operations manager with organizing our chaotic vendor relationships, creating a centralized database for our 60-plus suppliers of everything from specialty produce to kitchen equipment. Mom would help our events coordinator with the growing demand for private dining experiences, developing standardized packages while maintaining the personalized touch that had become our signature. Remember, in this industry, we succeed or fail as a team, I explained as we concluded the initial training. Hierarchy exists for operational clarity, but ego has no place in a successful restaurant. Everyone from dishwasher to head chef contributes essential elements to the guest experience. A lesson in humility delivered with professional courtesy rather than personal satisfaction. They nodded their understanding, perhaps beginning to recognize why their dismissal of restaurant work as beneath their daughter had been not just hurtful, but fundamentally misguided. The first week of their trial period progressed with surprising smoothness. Dad approached our vendor management challenges with the same analytical rigor he had once applied to engineering problems. Mom brought her well-honed interpersonal skills to client interactions, instantly establishing rapport with potential private dining customers. Both worked diligently, without complaint about tasks that must have seemed mundane compared to their previous professional positions. My staff, unaware of our familial connection, integrated them into our operation with the collaborative spirit I had cultivated. Wei, our operations manager, appreciated Dad's systematic approach to organization. Sophia, who had followed me from Ember and now managed our front of house, valued Mom's ability to handle demanding clients with diplomatic finesse. I maintained professional distance, reviewing their work with the same critical eye I applied to all staff performance. When Dad developed a vendor database that significantly streamlined our ordering process, I acknowledged its value. When Mom secured a corporate client for a series of monthly events, I recognized her achievement. Our interactions remained cordial but formal, confined to operational matters rather than personal reconciliation. The elephant in the room, our unresolved family conflict, remained unaddressed until the final day of their trial period. I had scheduled performance reviews as I would for any probationary employee, allocating 30 minutes to discuss their contributions and potential permanent positions. Dad arrived first for his 2 p.m. appointment, carrying a folder of documentation demonstrating the improvements he had implemented in our vendor management system. Your database has reduced our ordering errors by 32% in just 2 weeks, I acknowledged after reviewing his materials. The vendor consolidation recommendations could potentially save us significant costs while improving product consistency. He nodded, professional pride evident in his posture. I've drafted a Phase 2 plan for implementing automated inventory, tracking that would interface with the current system. The passion in his voice was familiar, the same enthusiasm he had once shown for engineering innovations, now directed toward restaurant operations he had previously dismissed as beneath consideration. I'm prepared to offer you a permanent position as our vendor relations manager, I said, sliding the employment contract across my desk. The terms are outlined here. The salary reflects both industry standards and the value your systems bring to our operation. He glanced at the figure, considerably below his former executive compensation, but fair for the restaurant industry and our specific market. I accept, he said without hesitation. Then, with uncharacteristic vulnerability, he added, Olivia, I owe you an apology. The personal statement amid our professional discussion caught me off guard. This is a performance review, not a family meeting. I understand. But as your employee, I need to acknowledge that I severely underestimated both this industry and your vision for your place within it. His eyes met mine directly. I was wrong. What you've built here demonstrates remarkable business acumen, leadership ability, and creative intelligence. Any parent should be proud. The words I had longed to hear for 7 years now arrived not as conditional acceptance, but as earned professional respect. My throat tightened unexpectedly. "Thank you for your candor," I managed, retreating to professional language as emotional. "Protection. Please sign the contract if the terms are acceptable. Your official start date will be Monday." After he left, I took several deep breaths before Mom's scheduled review. Her performance had been equally impressive, her natural charm and attention to detail translating perfectly to private event coordination. She had already booked 17 events representing over $200,000 in future revenue, with clients specifically requesting her as their point of contact. "Your client satisfaction ratings have been exceptional," I noted as we reviewed her trial. "Period metrics. You've shown particular skill in upselling our premium packages without making clients feel pressured." She smiled, a genuine expression rather than the social mask she had perfected through years of real estate networking. "I've discovered I enjoy this work more than I expected. Helping people plan meaningful celebrations is surprisingly rewarding." I presented her with an employment contract for events director, a more significant position than initially discussed, given her demonstrated capabilities. "This is very generous," she said, reviewing the terms. Then, following Dad's lead in breaking our unspoken agreement to maintain professional boundaries, she added, "I was wrong about you, Olivia, and about this industry." I remained silent, neither encouraging nor discouraging the personal turn in our conversation. We were so focused on external markers of success, prestigious titles, certain income brackets, social standing, that we couldn't see the incredible leader you were becoming. Her voice wavered slightly. "Working here, seeing how you've built not just a business but a community, I understand now what you saw 7 years ago that we couldn't." The validation created a complicated swirl of emotions: satisfaction at the acknowledgement, resentment that it had taken their personal downfall to generate this insight, cautious hope that genuine understanding might be possible between us after all. "The restaurant opens for service in an hour," I said, redirecting to safer professional territory. "If you're accepting the position, the staff meeting starts in 15 minutes. "I accept," she said, signing the contract. "And Olivia, thank you. Not just for the job, but for the second chance we don't deserve." As she left my office, I remained seated, processing the unexpected developments of the past 2 weeks. My parents, who had once changed their locks to keep me out of their home because of my career choice, were now employees in the restaurant I had built without their support. The positions had reversed in ways none of us could have anticipated. Yet, something more significant than mere role reversal had occurred. Through directly experiencing the industry they had dismissed, they had gained genuine insight into its complexity, challenges, and rewards. Their understanding hadn't come through my explanations or arguments, but through lived experience, the most powerful teacher of all. As I prepared to join my staff for our pre-service meeting, I realized that success had given me something beyond financial security or professional validation. It had given me the strength to offer opportunity rather than retribution, the confidence to value reconciliation over revenge, and the wisdom to recognize that transformation was possible even in relationships that seemed permanently broken. My parents and I had a long way to go in rebuilding personal trust. The wounds of rejection wouldn't heal overnight. But in creating a restaurant dedicated to honoring diverse food traditions while embracing innovation, I had unknowingly created a space where family traditions might similarly be honored while new relationships evolved. I stepped into the staff meeting room where my team, including my newly hired vendor relations manager and events director, had gathered for our daily pre-service briefing. For the first time in 7 years, my parents were present for an important moment in my professional life. The circumstances were nothing like any of us would have imagined, but perhaps they were exactly what we all needed to grow beyond the limitations of our past relationships. "Good afternoon, everyone," I began, addressing my staff with the quiet confidence that had become my leadership signature. "Today marks new beginnings in several aspects of our operation. The transition from estranged family members to Professional colleagues unfolded with unexpected complexity in the weeks that followed. During working hours, we maintained strictly professional boundaries. Raymond, as he asked to be called at work, revolutionized our vendor management systems with engineering precision, while Victoria built our private dining business with remarkable efficiency. Their roles rarely required direct interaction with me, creating a comfortable buffer as we navigated our new dynamic. The restaurant staff, still unaware of our familial connection, integrated them fully into our team. My parents adapted to restaurant culture with surprising flexibility, embracing the eclectic personalities, diverse backgrounds, and unconventional work schedules that characterized our industry. They participated in family meals, that sacred restaurant tradition where staff share food before service, and gradually absorbed the unique vocabulary and rhythms of hospitality work. I observed these developments with cautious optimism. Their willingness to immerse themselves in my world demonstrated a shift in perspective I hadn't thought possible. Yet I maintained emotional distance, uncertain whether their adaptation represented genuine change or merely a practical response to financial necessity. 1 month into their employment, I faced a decision that would inevitably complicate our carefully compartmentalized relationship. Food and Wine magazine had requested an interview featuring Terroir's innovative approach to cultural cuisine. The journalist specifically wanted to explore the connection between my personal background and culinary philosophy, the human story behind the food, as she described it. After confirming the interview, I called my parents into my office separately to address the situation. The article will inevitably mention my family background and education, I explained to Dad. I need to know your preference regarding your current employment here. I can request that the journalist omit those details, or I can be transparent about our family's journey, including the recent developments. He considered the question with the methodical thoughtfulness that characterized his approach to engineering. Problems. What would serve the restaurant best? His prioritization of the business over personal pride surprised me. Honestly, an authentic story of reconciliation through food would be compelling, but it would also mean public acknowledgement of your previous rejection of my career path. He nodded slowly. When I was still at Westwood, I would have worried about how such a story might affect my professional reputation. That seems trivial now. He met my gaze directly. Tell the truth, Olivia. All of it, including that we were wrong. Victoria expressed similar sentiments when I raised the question with her later that day. The real estate business taught me the power of narrative in creating value, she noted with unexpected self-awareness. Your restaurant story, including our misguided opposition and current evolution, has authenticity that shouldn't be sanitized for my comfort. Their willingness to embrace public accountability for past mistakes revealed character growth I hadn't anticipated. The parents who had once prioritized appearances above all else now valued truth over social perception. Financial downfall had stripped away certain privileges, but it had also created space for more meaningful values to emerge. When the Food and Wine journalist arrived the following week, I gave her full access to our operation, including brief interviews with key staff members. As we settled into the final conversation about my personal journey, I made a spontaneous decision. Would you be interested in speaking with my parents? They've recently joined our team in management roles. The journalist's eyebrows raised with professional interest. Your parents work for you? That's an unusual dynamic. It's a recent development, I acknowledged, and it follows a 7-year estrangement after they disapproved of my career choice. Her eyes widened. Now that's a story. With their prior consent, I arranged for my parents to join our conversation. Over the next hour, we shared our family's journey with remarkable candor. Their initial rejection of my restaurant career, the years of separation, their financial reversal, and our current professional reconnection. They spoke with genuine remorse about their previous dismissal of the industry they now participated in, acknowledging the narrow definition of success that had cost them years with their only child. I believed I understood what constituted meaningful work, Dad explained thoughtfully. Engineering seemed objectively valuable while food service appeared merely transactional. Now I recognize that creating experiences that bring people together around a table has profound social significance. We measured success through conventional metrics: prestige, income, status, Mom added. Working here has taught me that true accomplishment lies in building something that reflects your values and serves others authentically. The journalist captured their insights alongside descriptions of our cuisine and philosophy. When the article appeared 6 weeks later, it presented not just a profile of an innovative restaurant, but the story of a family rebuilding connection through shared purpose, despite fundamentally different paths to that understanding. The publicity generated by the feature brought a new wave of interest in terroir. Reservations became even harder to secure. Customers occasionally requested to meet the parents mentioned in the article, curious about the family that had found reconciliation. Through professional collaboration, our private dining inquiries doubled, with many clients specifically asking to work with Victoria. The public nature of our story eliminated any possibility of maintaining purely professional boundaries within the restaurant. Staff who had previously been unaware of our connection now understood the complex dynamics underlying our interactions. To their credit, they adapted with the flexibility characteristic of restaurant professionals accustomed to managing complicated human situations. With discretion, I remained cautious about extending our relationship beyond the workplace. Years of rejection had built protective walls that wouldn't dismantle easily. My parents seemed to understand this, never pushing for personal reconciliation outside professional parameters. They performed their roles with dedication and respect, gradually earning their positions through merit rather than familial connection. 4 months after they joined Terroir, an unexpected situation forced evolution in our carefully managed dynamic. Victoria developed pneumonia, requiring hospitalization for 3 days, followed by a week of home recovery. With our busy holiday season approaching and 17 private events scheduled, her absence created significant operational challenges. I can handle the basic coordination, our assistant event planner assured me. But Victoria maintained most client relationships personally. Several have already called asking specifically for her. I nodded, calculating our options. Send me her client files. I'll make the necessary calls and cover the most immediate consultations. That evening after service, I reviewed Victoria's meticulous notes on upcoming events. Her attention to detail impressed me. Each file contained not just logistics, but personal insights about clients' preferences, family dynamics, and unstated priorities. She had developed a sophisticated understanding of how to create meaningful celebration experiences tailored to individual needs rather than generic packages. The following morning, I called her most immediate clients to explain the situation and assure them their events would proceed seamlessly. Most expressed genuine concern for her health alongside their practical questions. Her client relationships clearly extended beyond transactional interactions to authentic connections, a quality I recognized from my own approach to regular restaurant patrons. After completing the essential calls, I found myself dialing Victoria's number. Professional responsibility demanded checking on her recovery timeline, but something beyond business obligation motivated the contact. Hearing about her through concerned clients had shifted my perspective, revealing dimensions of her professional identity I hadn't fully appreciated. The call connected to a residential landline rather than her cell phone. After several rings, Dad answered. Raymond? I'm calling about Victoria's recovery progress and event schedule, I said, maintaining professional framing. She's resting now, he replied, his voice carrying the distinctive strain of caregiver concern. The fever's down, but the cough is still severe. The doctor says another week before she should return to work environments. I understand. We're managing the immediate event needs, but please have her call when she's feeling stronger to discuss transition planning. A brief silence followed before he spoke again, his tone shifting from professional to personal. "She'd appreciate hearing from you, Olivia, not just about work." The implicit invitation to break our carefully maintained boundaries caught me off guard. "I'm quite busy covering her responsibilities alongside my own," I replied, retreating to the safer territory of professional priorities. "Of course," he acknowledged without pushing further. "I'll let her know you called about the event schedule." After ending the call, I found myself unusually distracted during pre-service preparations. The brief exchange had triggered unexpected emotional turbulence beneath my professional composure. Dad's gentle suggestion that Victoria would value personal contact revealed vulnerability that complicated my carefully maintained emotional distance. That evening, long after service concluded, I found myself driving to the address in my employee records, a modest garden apartment in a middle-class neighborhood far from their former Glenbrook estate. The impulse felt simultaneously rational, checking on a key employee's recovery, and irrational, risking the fragile emotional equilibrium we had established. Dad answered my knock with visible surprise. He wore reading glasses and casual clothes that contrasted sharply with the formal business attire that had been his uniform throughout my childhood. "Olivia, this is unexpected." "I brought soup," I explained, holding up the insulated container as if it justified my unannounced appearance. "Chef Miguel's chicken pozole. It's helpful for respiratory recovery." He opened the door wider in her silent invitation. I stepped into their apartment, the first time I had entered their living space since the day they had changed the locks on our family home 7 years earlier. The modest 2-bedroom unit was simply furnished with a few pieces I recognized from our former house, alongside inexpensive new items, a stark contrast to the carefully curated showcase home they had once maintained. "Victoria's resting in the bedroom. I'll let her know you're here." While he was gone, I took in the details of their current life evident throughout the space. Dad's engineering books shared shelves with new editions on restaurant management and food systems. A small desk in the corner held Victoria's event, planning materials, fabric swatches, sample menus, and client files neatly organized. The refrigerator displayed a printed review of Terroir, carefully mounted in a magnetic frame. Most striking was a small side table holding framed photographs, recent staff pictures from the restaurant, alongside much older family photos from my childhood. Images I had assumed were long discarded during their rejection now held prominent placement in their reduced living space. "Olivia." Victoria's voice drew my attention to the hallway where she stood in a bathrobe, clearly weakened by illness, but eyes brightening at my presence. "What a wonderful surprise." "I brought Chef Miguel's pozole," I repeated, the professional pretext suddenly feeling insufficient for the emotional weight of the moment. "The staff sends their best wishes for your recovery." She settled carefully onto the sofa, wrapped in a blanket despite the apartment's warmth. "That's very thoughtful. Please thank everyone for me." An awkward silence followed, the inevitable consequence of attempting personal interaction after maintaining professional distance for months. We had learned to communicate about vendor, contracts, and event packages, but had carefully avoided the deeper conversations our situation demanded. "The Goldstein anniversary party is scheduled for next Saturday," I said, retreating to comfortable work topics. "Amelia has the basic details under control, but the client has requested some specific menu modifications we should discuss." Victoria nodded, but her expression reflected disappointment at the conversational direction. "My client notes should cover the essential parameters. The Goldsteins have dietary restrictions detailed on page 3 of their file." "Yes, I reviewed those. Very comprehensive documentation." Another silence stretched between us, heavier than the first. Dad had disappeared into the kitchen, ostensibly to heat the soup, but clearly giving us space to navigate this tentative interaction. "Your work with our private dining program has been exceptional," I finally offered. "The client feedback consistently mentions your attention to personal details that make their events meaningful beyond the menu." Thank you. Her professional confidence briefly surfaced through physical weakness. I've discovered that celebrating important milestones through food creates powerful connections. People remember how you made them feel during significant moments. The observation struck me with its insight and implicit relevance to our own fractured history, filled with significant moments experienced separately due to broken connection. How are you really feeling? I asked, finally stepping beyond professional inquiry into personal concern. The simple question seemed to release something she had been carefully containing. Her eyes filled with tears that had nothing to do with physical illness. Grateful, she said softly. For the job? Obviously, we needed it desperately. But more importantly, for the chance to understand your world, to see what you've built, to witness the leader you've become without our support. She wiped her eyes with embarrassment. The pneumonia medication makes me emotional. I found myself unexpectedly moved by her vulnerability. This woman who had once presented unfailing strength and composure, now allowing me to see her genuine feelings. The restaurant has given me purpose I never found in real estate, she continued when I remained silent. Helping people celebrate important moments feels meaningful in ways selling properties never did, even at the highest commission levels. Her honest assessment of finding greater fulfillment in work she had once dismissed created an opening I hadn't anticipated. Why did you push me so hard toward medicine when I showed no interest or aptitude for it? The direct question surprised us both. We had carefully avoided discussing our painful history during their employment, focusing exclusively on present professional matters. Victoria sighed, gathering her thoughts. The simple answer is fear. Your father and I both came from families with significant financial instability. His father lost their farm when the bank foreclosed. My mother worked 3 jobs after my father left. She looked toward the kitchen where Dad was taking suspiciously long with the soup. We believed certain professional paths guaranteed security, while others invited risk. Medicine seemed the safest choice, I prompted. Medicine, law, engineering, careers with clear trajectories and reliable returns on educational investment, she confirmed. We measured success by how effectively it protected against the financial insecurity we had experienced in childhood. Her explanation offered context I had never fully considered, their rigid expectations stemming not from arbitrary status seeking, but from deeply rooted financial trauma they had never processed. When you chose restaurant work, we saw only the precariousness of the industry, not the potential for creating something uniquely valuable, she continued. We reacted from fear rather than supporting your vision. Dad returned with 3 bowls of steaming pozole on a tray, having apparently overheard enough to continue the thread. We believed we were protecting you from hardship. Instead, we created it by withdrawing support precisely when you needed it most. The simple acknowledgement of their mistake, without qualification or expectation, shifted something fundamental in the emotional atmosphere between us. Not instant forgiveness, but perhaps the beginning of understanding that might eventually lead there. We ate together in contemplative silence, our first shared meal in 7 years. The pozole's rich complexity seemed appropriate for the moment. Layers of flavor developed through time and careful attention, various elements combining to create something both nourishing and complex. This soup is remarkable, Dad observed. The depth of flavor from relatively simple ingredients. Chef Miguel simmers the stock for 12 hours, I explained, finding comfortable ground in culinary discussion. He learned the technique from his grandmother in Oaxaca. That's what makes your restaurant special, Victoria noted. You honor food traditions while creating something distinctly contemporary. It's not fusion for novelty's sake, but thoughtful translation across cultural contexts. Her insightful characterization of my culinary philosophy, something I had never explicitly explained to them, revealed how closely she had observed and understood my work, despite our limited personal interaction. She had studied my professional vision with the same attention to detail she brought to client relationships. As the evening progressed, our conversation gradually relaxed into more natural rhythms. We discussed restaurant operations, upcoming events, and potential menu developments. Professional topics still, but approached with genuine engagement rather than deliberate emotional distance. By the time I prepared to leave, something subtle but significant had shifted in our dynamic. "Thank you for coming," Victoria said as I gathered my things. "It meant a great deal." I nodded, not quite ready for explicit emotional acknowledgement, but no longer actively resistant to the possibility of personal reconnection alongside our professional relationship. "Rest and recover properly," I advised, maintaining some protective distance through practical concern. "The holiday season will be demanding when you return." As I drove back to my apartment, I reflected on the evening's unexpected developments. The walls I had built to protect myself from further rejection hadn't crumbled entirely, but perhaps doorways had formed, small openings through which more authentic connection might eventually flow. At the restaurant the following day, I found myself incorporating insights from our conversation into a new seasonal menu concept. Exploring the theme of traditions reimagined, I developed dishes that honored foundational techniques while embracing evolution and adaptation. The culinary parallels to our family situation weren't lost on me, ingredients with separate histories finding unexpected harmony through thoughtful combination. Victoria returned to work the following week, resuming her responsibilities with characteristic efficiency. Our interaction maintained professional parameters but carried new undercurrents of potential personal connection. Staff who had witnessed our formerly rigid boundaries noticed the subtle shift, responding with the discreet adaptability that characterized our restaurant culture. 2 weeks later, an unexpected opportunity emerged that would further test the evolving boundaries of our relationship. The James Beard Foundation had selected me as a featured chef for their upcoming benefit dinner, a significant professional honor that would place Terroir in conversation with the country's most acclaimed restaurants. The invitation included 2 guest tickets for the award ceremony following the dinner service. In previous years, I would have invited Sophia or Chef Miguel as my guests, recognizing their contributions to Terroir's success through shared professional recognition. Now I found myself considering an alternative that would have seemed unthinkable months earlier. After considerable contemplation, I approached my parents after a staff meeting. "The James Beard Foundation has invited me to prepare a signature course for their annual benefit dinner next month," I explained, maintaining professional framing. "The event includes tickets for accompanying guests at the awards ceremony. I thought you might be interested in attending as representatives of our private dining and vendor relations departments. The networking opportunities could benefit our operation." The transparent professional pretext fooled none of us, but it provided necessary emotional scaffolding for what represented a significant personal invitation beneath the business rationale. "We would be honored," Dad replied, matching my professional tone while his eyes conveyed deeper understanding of what the invitation represented. "Absolutely," Victoria agreed. "The contacts could be valuable for our events program." The careful dance of reconnection continued, personal significance masked by professional justification as we gradually built bridges across the chasm of our separated years. As we collaborated on preparations for the James Beard event, selecting signature dishes and refining presentations, our working relationship developed new dimensions of mutual respect. They demonstrated genuine appreciation for my culinary perspective, while offering valuable insights from their professional backgrounds. The blend of my food knowledge with Dad's systems thinking and Victoria's understanding of celebration created innovative approaches that strengthened our overall concept. The night of the James Beard dinner arrived with characteristic industry intensity. Last-minute adjustments, ingredient emergencies, and logistical challenges managed through the collaborative problem-solving that defines successful restaurant operations. My parents witnessed firsthand the controlled chaos of high-profile culinary events, gaining new appreciation for the pressure under which creative culinary work unfolds. As we prepared to depart for the awards ceremony following service, Victoria approached me with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Before we join the public portion of the evening, your father and I have something for you." She handed me a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside, I found a chef's knife of exceptional quality, Japanese steel with a handle of stabilized maple burl, perfectly balanced for professional use. The blade had been engraved with subtle characters that took me a moment to recognize, my name in Mandarin, alongside the character for vision. "We wanted to acknowledge your achievement appropriately," Dad explained. "This represents not just tonight's recognition, but the journey you've undertaken despite our failure to support your path." The thoughtfulness of the gift, specifically, chosen for its professional relevance rather than sentimental value, reflected their growing understanding of my priorities and passion. They had selected something that honored my craft rather than imposing their own values or preferences. "The craftsman who made it specializes in blending traditional Japanese blacksmithing with contemporary materials," Victoria added. "We thought that resonance with your culinary philosophy made it particularly appropriate." The parallel wasn't subtle, but it was genuine. Recognition of how I had developed my own approach to honoring tradition while embracing innovation, both culinarily and personally. The gift acknowledged my professional identity in ways their previous dismissal had denied. "Thank you," I said simply, running my finger along the knife's perfect balance point. "It's an exceptional tool." As we entered the award ceremony together, the chef and her once estranged parents, now colleagues in a shared enterprise, I realized that reconciliation, like great cuisine, couldn't be rushed or forced. It developed through patient attention to foundational elements, thoughtful combination of distinct components, and respect for both tradition and innovation. Our relationship remained a work in progress, complex layers of past hurt, present cooperation, and potential future connection, still developing their full expression. But standing alongside them as my name was announced among celebrated culinary professionals, I recognized that sometimes the most unexpected ingredients create the most remarkable results when given proper time and attention. The transformative journey that had begun with rejection had evolved through independence, determination, and eventually, reconnection on new terms. The parents who had once dismissed my chosen path now stood witness to its fruition, not through capitulation to their former expectations, but through mutual growth toward new understanding. As applause filled the room around us, I caught their expressions of genuine pride, not the conditional approval once withheld when I deviated from their prescribed path, but authentic appreciation for the vision I had pursued despite their opposition. The reversal of our circumstances had created not just changed roles, but expanded perspectives for us all. My restaurant had become not just my professional achievement, but our shared second chance, a place where family relationships, like cherished recipes, could be simultaneously honored in their traditional form and reimagined for contemporary context. The path forward would require continued attention, adaptation, and authentic engagement. But the essential ingredients for meaningful reconciliation had finally found their proper balance. The James Beard recognition catapulted Terroir into a different echelon of culinary establishments. Coverage in major food publications brought national attention, and reservation requests from around the country flooded our systems. What had begun as a neighborhood-focused restaurant with a loyal Brooklyn following had transformed into a destination dining experience that food enthusiasts planned trips around. This expansion of influence brought both opportunities and challenges. Our intimate 40-seat space, once perfectly suited to our concept, now felt constrictive. Turning away hundreds of potential guests weekly meant leaving both revenue and relationship-building opportunities untapped. Maintaining quality at maximum capacity strained our kitchen resources. Staff who had been with me since opening demonstrated The inevitable signs of burnout that accompany sustained high-volume, high-standard service. 3 months after the James Beard event, I called a meeting with our management team, now including both my parents in their respective roles, to address our strategic situation. "We've reached an inflection point," I began, standing before the whiteboard in our staff room. "Terroir can continue as it exists, maintaining current operations and standards while turning away significant business. Or we can consider thoughtful expansion that preserves our ethos while accommodating more guests." Sophia, who had followed me from Ember and now served as our general manager, nodded in agreement. "Our wait list has grown from 2 months to 4. We're disappointing more potential customers than we're serving. And private event requests have tripled," Victoria added, consulting her meticulous records. "We've declined 67 events in the past quarter due to space limitations, representing approximately $400,000 in unfulfilled revenue." Miguel, our head chef who had started as a line cook during our opening year, crossed his arms with characteristic protective concern for our culinary standards. "Expansion often dilutes quality. Many restaurants lose their soul when they grow too quickly." "Precisely my concern," I acknowledged, "which is why this decision requires careful consideration from all perspectives." Dad, who had remained silent during the initial discussion, now spoke with the analytical clarity that had become his valuable contribution to our team. "There are multiple expansion models to consider, each with distinct advantages and constraints." He stood and approached the whiteboard, seeking my permission with a glance before picking up a marker. A small but meaningful acknowledgement of leadership hierarchy that reflected how thoroughly he had adapted to restaurant culture despite his previous executive position. "Traditional expansion follows 3 primary patterns," he continued, sketching as he spoke. "First, replication, creating identical locations that reproduce the original concept. Second, vertical integration, controlling more of your supply chain or extending into related products. Third, concept diversification, developing new restaurant concepts under the same management structure." His systematic breakdown of options reflected the engineering precision he brought to our operation, an approach I had initially resisted as too corporate, but had come to value for its clarity and thoroughness. "Each model presents different financial profiles and operational challenges," he concluded. "The question isn't just whether to expand, but how to expand in ways that enhance rather than dilute what makes Terroir special." The discussion continued for hours, with each team member contributing perspectives from their respective domains: culinary, integrity, service standards, financial sustainability, operational feasibility. The conversation reflected the collaborative leadership culture I had intentionally fostered, where hierarchy existed for decision-making clarity but input was valued from all experienced voices. "Before we make any decisions," I said as our meeting approached its 3rd hour, "I'd like each of you to spend time considering what truly defines Terroir's essence. What elements must be preserved regardless of scale? What aspects could evolve without compromising our core values?" The assignment prompted thoughtful reflection throughout the following week. Team members observed service with renewed analytical attention, noting subtle details that contributed to our distinctive guest experience. Conversations during family meal, that sacred pre-service gathering, often turned to philosophical discussions about balancing growth with authenticity. Our follow-up meeting revealed remarkable consensus about Terroir's essential qualities: our commitment to cultural storytelling through food, our personalized approach to guest experience, our dedication to ingredient integrity, and our family-like staff culture. The challenge would be determining which expansion model could best preserve these elements while allowing more people to experience them. Victoria surprised me by presenting the most innovative solution, one that honored our core values while addressing practical limitations. What makes Terroir special isn't just the food or the space, but the educational component. how each dish connects to cultural traditions reimagined for contemporary context, she explained, displaying boards she had created with characteristic attention to detail. Rather than diluting this through traditional expansion, what if we created a culinary education center adjacent to the restaurant? Her concept was unexpectedly brilliant, a dedicated space where we could offer cooking, classes, producer workshops, cultural food history presentations, and private dining experiences built around educational themes. The approach would preserve our intimate restaurant setting while creating new revenue streams that aligned perfectly with our mission of cultural storytelling through food. We could schedule daytime programming that utilizes our kitchen during traditionally slow periods, she continued. Evening events could incorporate dining experiences that showcase techniques guests just learned. Corporate team-building programs could combine collaborative cooking with meaningful cultural education. The proposal demonstrated how thoroughly Victoria had internalized and expanded upon Terroir's mission, transforming from someone who had once dismissed restaurant work to someone who now envisioned innovative ways to elevate its impact. Her real estate background, once the domain of her separate professional identity, now informed her understanding of how physical space could enhance experiential value. The team responded with immediate enthusiasm, building upon her concept. With their respective expertise, Miguel suggested rotating educational themes that could align with seasonal menu changes. Sophia identified operational efficiencies in staffing across connected spaces. Dad analyzed potential layouts that would maximize functional flow between environments. I observed their collaborative energy with quiet pride, recognizing how far we had evolved from my initial solo venture. Terroir had become not just my restaurant, but our collective creative enterprise, a community of passionate professionals who had developed shared ownership of its mission, despite diverse backgrounds and entry points. When the discussion reached natural conclusion, all eyes turned to me for the decisive direction that remained my responsibility as founder and executive chef. Victoria's concept elegantly addresses our current challenges while creating new opportunities aligned with our values, I affirmed. Let's develop a comprehensive implementation plan with projected timelines and financial requirements. The decision represented more than a business strategy. It reflected my growing comfort with integrating my parents' contributions into our shared enterprise. Victoria's proposal would have significant impact on Terroir's evolution, potentially transforming our business model in ways I hadn't envisioned. My willingness to embrace her concept demonstrated trust that would have seemed impossible during our years of estrangement. The following months dissolved into the controlled chaos of expansion planning alongside daily restaurant operations. We identified a vacant storefront adjacent to our existing space, a former art gallery with the high ceilings and natural light ideal for creating an inspiring educational environment. The property required significant renovation, but offered the rare opportunity to expand without relocating. Dad led the design process with unexpected creative vision, collaborating with an architect to create seamless connection between our existing restaurant and the new education center. His engineering background informed practical considerations of kitchen workflow and ventilation requirements, while his growing appreciation for our culinary philosophy influenced aesthetic decisions that would support meaningful guest experiences. Victoria developed comprehensive programming concepts, creating curriculum outlines for everything from technical knife skills workshops to cultural deep dives into regional cooking traditions. She instituted a research program where staff could propose educational modules based on their personal heritage or culinary interests, ensuring diverse perspectives would inform our offerings. Throughout this intensive development period, our professional collaboration continued evolving toward more authentic personal reconnection. The boundaries between work relationships and family ties gradually softened, though certain emotional territories remained carefully circumnavigated by mutual unspoken agreement. We still maintained separate residences and primarily interacted within professional contexts. Yet small changes signaled evolving comfort with our complex dual relationship. We occasionally shared meals after work hours, discussing industry trends or expansion plans in settings more casual than formal meetings. Dad began offering rides when we worked particularly late shifts. Victoria sometimes brought homemade pastries. She had practiced from our dessert chef's recipes, seeking my professional critique rather than motherly approval. These subtle shifts represented neither complete reconciliation nor continued estrangement, but rather the development of a new relationship model that acknowledged both our familial history and our current professional reality. We were crafting something unprecedented in our shared experience: connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation, collaboration grounded in recognized value rather than assumed authority. The construction phase of our expansion brought inevitable stresses that tested this evolving dynamic. Permit delays, contractor disagreements, and budget adjustments created tension that occasionally reopened old communication patterns. During particularly challenging moments, I found myself retreating into professional distance, while my parents reverted to problem-solving approaches that reflected their former corporate mindsets rather than restaurant culture values. One particularly difficult afternoon, after learning our custom kitchen equipment would be delayed by 12 weeks, potentially derailing our entire opening timeline, an argument erupted that transcended professional disagreement. "This timeline is utterly unacceptable," Dad declared, his voice carrying the executive authority that had once dominated our household. "I'll demand they prioritize our order and expedite manufacturing." "That approach won't work with artisan fabricators," I countered, irritation sharpening my tone. "Their craftsmanship is why we selected them. Pressuring techniques that might influence corporate suppliers will only damage relationships we need for long-term success." "With all due respect," he replied with the particular formality that historically preceded his most dismissive comments, "I've managed international supply chains for 30 years. There are leveraging strategies that work universally." "This industry operates differently," I insisted, feeling old defensive patterns resurfacing. "Relationships matter more than leverage. Mutual respect produces better results than corporate pressure tactics." Victoria intervened with the diplomatic skill she had developed through decades of delicate client negotiations. "Perhaps we're approaching this from unnecessarily opposing perspectives. Raymond's experience with manufacturing timelines offers valuable insight, while Olivia's understanding of industry relationships provides essential context. Both viewpoints have merit for developing an effective solution." Her measured assessment created space for mutual acknowledgement rather than defensive entrenchment. The moment represented a mini breakthrough in our evolving dynamic, recognition that our different professional backgrounds could provide complementary wisdom rather than competing authorities when approached with appropriate respect. "You're right," I acknowledged after a calming breath. "Dad's supply chain experience is valuable, especially regarding production timeframes and alternative sourcing. My concern is maintaining relationships that will serve us long after this immediate challenge is resolved." Dad nodded, his posture softening. "And your point about industry-specific relationship dynamics is well taken. Perhaps we should develop a hybrid approach that respects craftsman culture while addressing production urgency." The exchange demonstrated our developing capacity to navigate disagreement productively, acknowledging diverse expertise while working toward shared objectives. The resolution we ultimately developed incorporated elements from both perspectives, resulting in a more effective approach than either of us could have created independently. As construction progressed despite inevitable setbacks, we established a weekly tradition that further bridged our professional and personal relationships. Every Sunday evening after the restaurant closed, we gathered in the partially completed education space to share a meal prepared collaboratively from childhood recipes and new culinary inspirations, merging our family food traditions with contemporary techniques that reflected terroir's philosophy. These Sunday suppers became a safe space for gradually exploring topics that remained difficult within purely professional contexts. Gathered around food we had prepared together, conversation could flow more naturally between business discussions and personal reflections, between present collaborations and past misunderstandings. During one such meal, approximately 7 months into our expansion project and nearly a year after my parents had joined Terroir, Victoria broached a subject we had carefully avoided throughout our professional reconciliation. "I found a box of your childhood art while reorganizing our storage unit last week," she mentioned, her tone deliberately casual, though her body language revealed awareness of the emotional territory she was entering. "Your elementary school, portfolios, and high school sketchbooks. I never realized how consistently your creativity expressed itself through food imagery, even then." I continued slicing the braised short ribs I had prepared, maintaining focus on the precise knife work that provided emotional comfort through technical familiarity. "Art was always my preferred subject. You and Dad considered it a distraction from more academic priorities." The observation wasn't offered with accusatory intent, but as simple acknowledgement of historical reality, a perspective made possible by our evolving relationship and my growing security and professional achievement. "We were wrong about many things," Dad said quietly, surprising me with his directness, "including how we evaluated potential career paths. We categorized professions hierarchically based on status and financial stability rather than personal fulfillment or authentic contribution." His admission contained no qualifications or justifications, a straightforward acknowledgement of mistaken values that had caused significant pain. This pattern of clean acknowledgement without defensive explanation had characterized his most meaningful contributions to our healing process. "Why did you keep my childhood art?" I asked Victoria, genuine curiosity replacing the defensiveness such questions would have previously triggered. "You removed family photos when you changed the locks, but apparently preserved artwork from the child who had disappointed you." The question created momentary tension, referencing as it did the painful specifics of our estrangement. Victoria set down her fork, considering her response with the thoughtfulness she now brought to difficult conversations, rather than the reactive dismissal that had characterized our previous conflicts. "The photos were removed impulsively during those first emotional weeks," she admitted. "A childish attempt to erase painful reminders of what we perceived as rejection. The artwork remained in storage because we couldn't bear to discard it, even during our worst moments of anger and hurt. Despite our terrible handling of our disagreement, we never stopped loving you, Olivia," Dad added with uncharacteristic emotional directness. "We were wrong about your choices, wrong about how we responded, wrong about what constituted success. But the preservation of your childhood creative work represented the one thing we managed to get right: recognition that something precious shouldn't be discarded even when relationships falter." The conversation represented another layer of healing, acknowledgement of both the harm inflicted and the love that had persisted despite profound disagreement and separation. Not complete resolution of complex family history, but another step toward authentic reconciliation built on honest assessment rather than obligatory forgiveness. As our meal concluded, Victoria hesitantly raised another personal topic that had remained unaddressed throughout our professional collaboration. "Your birthday is next month. Would it be appropriate? Would you be comfortable if we acknowledged it in some way? Not necessarily as parents, but as people who care about you and recognize the significance of your life." The question contained multiple layers of meaning: recognition of past birthdays missed during estrangement, acknowledgement of our still evolving relationship status, respect for boundaries I might still need, genuine desire to celebrate my existence despite our complicated history. "I'm hosting a small gathering at my apartment," I replied after brief consideration. "Just close friends and key staff celebrating another year of Terroir's evolution alongside my own. You would be welcome to attend, not as employees or even necessarily as parents, but as important people in my current life journey." The invitation represented significant evolution in our relationship, neither complete restoration of former family bonds nor continuation of purely professional connection, but rather the emergence of something new that honored both our shared history and our current reality. The relaxed warmth in their expressions confirmed the invitation's importance beyond mere social inclusion. 2 weeks before my birthday, an unexpected development created new dimensions in our evolving family. Narrative. Victoria arrived at our weekly management meeting with uncharacteristic nervous energy, requesting a few minutes to share important information with the team. As you know, our education center concept has generated significant pre-opening interest, she began, distributing folders with her customary organizational precision. We've already booked 17 corporate team-building experiences and 26 private events for the first quarter of operations. This success has created both opportunity and challenge regarding staffing our educational programming. She paused, drawing a steadying breath before continuing. I've invested considerable time developing curriculum and training guidelines to ensure consistent quality across offerings. The challenge remains finding instructors who embody both technical expertise and the cultural storytelling that defines Terroir's approach. Dad reached for her hand in a rare public display of personal connection, offering silent support for whatever announcement was causing such evident anxiety. After considerable reflection and discussion with Raymond, I've made the decision to sell our apartment and relocate to a rental unit within walking distance of the restaurant, she continued. The equity from the sale will provide approximately $185,000 that I would like to invest as additional capital contribution toward our education center, specifically funding development of instructor training programs and curriculum resources. The announcement represented far more than financial investment. Victoria was proposing liquidation of their last significant asset, their modest post-downsizing home, to further commit to our shared enterprise. The decision demonstrated profound evolution from the woman who had once prioritized residential prestige and material security above all other values. This investment would increase your ownership stake proportionally, I noted, maintaining professional framing while processing the emotional significance of her proposal. That's secondary to my primary motivation, she replied with unexpected vulnerability. This project represents opportunity to contribute meaningfully to an endeavor I deeply believe in. The financial structure matters less than creating something of lasting value that embodies principles I've come to embrace through working here. Her sincerity was unmistakable, the statement reflecting genuine values transformation rather than strategic positioning. The woman who had once measured success through property ownership and social status now found greater fulfillment in contributing to educational impact and cultural preservation through food. The investment would certainly accelerate our programming development, I acknowledged, maintaining professional assessment while absorbing the personal implications. However, I have concerns about your financial security if you liquidate your primary residence. Dad smiled at my expression of concern for their well-being, a reversal of traditional parent-child protective roles. We've calculated the financial implications carefully. Between Victoria's events director compensation, my vendor relations salary, and our remaining retirement accounts, we have sufficient stability without the property. At this stage of life, contributing to meaningful work alongside family holds greater value than maintaining underutilized real estate. His statement reflected perhaps the most profound value shift in their journey, prioritizing purposeful contribution and relationship restoration above material security and status considerations that had previously dominated their decision-making. After discussing financial and legal details with appropriate professional thoroughness, I called for a short break before addressing other agenda items. As the team dispersed for coffee, I asked my parents to join me in my office, the first time I had initiated private family conversation within our workplace environment. Once the door closed behind us, I abandoned professional pretense and addressed the deeper significance of their proposal. This represents more than business, investment. You're literally selling your home to further commit to this shared enterprise." Victoria nodded, emotion visible beneath her professional composure. "When we first joined Terroir, financial necessity drove our decision. Now purpose motivates our choices. The Education Center embodies values we've come to embrace through working here, cultural preservation, knowledge sharing, community building through food traditions. We lived decades believing ownership of things defined success," Dad added with the reflective wisdom that had emerged through his career reinvention. "Now we understand that contribution to something meaningful offers greater fulfillment than possession of status symbols." Their transformed perspective represented the most profound outcome of our unexpected reconnection. Not just role reversal or changed circumstances, but fundamental reconsideration of what constitutes meaningful life investment. The parents who had once prioritized prestigious careers and material acquisition above relationship with their daughter now literally sold their home to participate in her vision for cultural impact through food education. "I need to consider the financial and legal implications appropriately," I said, maintaining necessary professional boundaries around what remained a significant business decision. But speaking personally rather than as Terroir's executive chef, "Your evolution continues to amaze me. The journey from changing locks to exclude me from your home to selling that home to further commit to our shared vision represents transformation I couldn't have imagined a year ago." The observation acknowledged both our painful history and our remarkable present, recognizing the significance of their changed priorities without dismissing the real harm our estrangement had caused. Neither simple forgiveness nor continued resentment, but rather appreciation of genuine growth alongside honest acknowledgement of our complex shared journey. 2 days before my birthday celebration, I finalized acceptance of Victoria's investment proposal with appropriate legal documentation and ownership adjustment. Beyond the professional development this capital would support, her commitment held profound personal significance. Tangible evidence of values transformation, rather than mere circumstantial adaptation. My birthday gathering reflected the integrated life I had gradually developed. Close friends sharing space with key staff members, professional colleagues becoming chosen family, and biological family finding new relational context through shared purpose rather than obligatory connection. In this atmosphere of authentic celebration, I announced our education center's official name, Heritage. This expansion represents Terroir's evolution from restaurant to cultural preservation enterprise, I explained to assembled guests. Heritage will create space where food traditions are not only honored, but actively transmitted to new generations through hands-on experience and thoughtful education. The name acknowledged both our culinary mission and our personal journey. Recognition that meaningful legacy requires not just preservation of tradition, but thoughtful evolution that allows core values to find relevant expression in changing contexts. My parents' expressions reflected understanding of this dual significance, appreciation of both the business concept and its metaphorical resonance with our family's reconciliation process. As construction on Heritage neared completion, our Sunday suppers relocated from the unfinished space to my apartment, a significant threshold crossing in our evolving relationship. My home had remained private sanctuary throughout our professional reconciliation, maintaining necessary boundary between work collaboration and personal reconnection. Opening this space represented another layer of trust, cautiously extended and carefully honored. During one such gathering, as we shared a meal that blended traditional Chinese dishes from my grandmother's recipes with contemporary techniques reflecting my culinary training, Dad raised his glass in a quiet toast. "To unexpected journeys," he offered, "and to the remarkable daughter who created not just a successful restaurant, but the opportunity for genuine redemption neither of us deserved, but both of us needed." The simple acknowledgement contained the essence of our extraordinary shared journey. From rejection through estrangement to cautious professional collaboration, and gradually toward authentic reconciliation built on mutual respect rather than obligatory connection. The parents who had once measured success through conventional status markers now found greater fulfillment contributing to an enterprise that preserved cultural heritage through food traditions. 1 week before Heritage's scheduled opening, as we conducted final systems checks and training sessions, a surprise visitor arrived during our staff preparation meeting. My former Harvard academic advisor, Dr. Eleanor Wright. I hadn't seen her since graduation 7 years earlier, though we had exchanged occasional emails tracking my unconventional career progression. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, observing our gathered team with characteristic perceptiveness. "I'm in New York for a conference and wanted to see this remarkable establishment I've been reading about." After introducing her to the staff and providing brief background context about her role during my university years, I offered a private tour of both the original restaurant and our nearly completed education center. As we moved through the spaces, I explained our culinary philosophy and educational mission. "Extraordinary," she commented, absorbing both physical environment and conceptual framework with the scholarly thoroughness that had characterized her mentorship. But not surprising. Even as a pre-med student, your most animated discussions involved food systems and cultural preservation through culinary traditions. Your essays consistently returned to themes of food as community connector and cultural storyteller. Her observation highlighted continuity in my passion, despite apparent career divergence, recognition that my current work represented authentic expression of values, evident even during my reluctant medical studies. As we concluded the tour in my office, she asked the question that had clearly motivated her visit. "Do you ever regret not pursuing medicine? Not following the path your parents had envisioned?" Before I could respond, Dad's voice unexpectedly entered the conversation. From the doorway, where he had approached with materials for our scheduled review. "If I may," he said, seeking permission to join this conversation between former student and academic mentor. My wife and I initially considered Olivia's career choice a terrible mistake, rejection of the secure professional path we had sacrificed to make possible. We were catastrophically wrong. His calm certainty reflected not obligatory parental support, but genuine recognition of mistaken values. What appears as career divergence actually represents deeper purpose alignment. Olivia has created an enterprise that nourishes bodies, preserves cultural heritage, builds community, and educates future generations. Her work embodies healing, prevention, education, and care, medicine's highest purposes expressed through different methodology. Dr. Wright studied him with scholarly assessment before turning back to me. "Your father articulates precisely what I observed in your undergraduate work. Consistent values finding expression through evolving methodologies. The best educational outcomes involve not blind adherence to predetermined professional paths, but rather discovery of authentic contribution aligned with core principles." As she departed, promising to return for Heritage's public opening the following week, I considered the significance of this unexpected academic validation alongside my father's insightful articulation of purpose continuity, despite apparent career divergence. Together, they highlighted an essential truth about my journey. What had appeared as rejection of parental expectations actually represented deeper alignment with values they had instilled, though expressed through different methodology than they had envisioned. The evening before Heritage's official opening, we held a private event for the extended terroir community, staff and their families, loyal customers, local suppliers, neighborhood supporters who had endured construction inconveniences, and the various contractors and craftspeople who had transformed our vision into physical reality. The gathering represented not just pre-opening celebration, but community appreciation for the collaborative effort our expansion had required. As conversations flowed through our connected spaces, the original restaurant now seamlessly integrated with our education center through thoughtful architectural transition, I observed my parents moving comfortably among diverse groups. Victoria discussed indigenous cooking techniques with Miguel's grandmother, who had traveled from Oaxaca for the opening. Dad explored sustainable fishing practices with our seafood supplier, applying his systems thinking to preservation challenges. Their natural integration into this community we had built together represented perhaps the most meaningful outcome of our extraordinary journey. The parents who had once defined success through narrow professional parameters and social status markers now found genuine fulfillment, contributing to an enterprise built around cultural preservation and knowledge transmission. The daughter who had pursued her vision despite their rejection now recognized the unexpected gifts their professional experience brought to its evolution. Near evening's end, I clinked a glass to gather collective attention. Surrounded by the extended family we had created, biological, professional, and community connections interwoven through shared purpose, I offered the evening's final toast. To heritage, not just the space we open tomorrow, but the concept it embodies. Meaningful legacy requires both honoring tradition and embracing evolution, preserving core values while finding their relevant expression in changing contexts. Through food, we connect past and future, preserve cultural wisdom, and create community across differences. Thank you all for contributing to this shared vision. As glasses raised around the room, I caught my parents' expressions. Pride untainted by ownership, appreciation without expectation, love without condition. Our extraordinary journey had transformed not just our specific relationship, but our fundamental understanding of success, purpose, and meaningful connection. The parents who had once kicked out their daughter for being just a waitress now contributed their talents to the restaurant she had built without their support. The daughter who had once been rejected for her career choice now valued their professional insights in evolving her vision. Together, we had created not just a successful business enterprise, but a new model of family relationship, based not on obligation or authority, but on mutual respect, shared purpose, and genuine appreciation for each person's unique contribution. Heritage would open its doors the following morning, welcoming the public to experience our expanded vision for cultural preservation through food education. But its most profound lesson had already manifested through our own unexpected journey, the I. Recognition that true legacy transcends professional titles or material acquisition to find expression through authentic contribution, meaningful connection, and values that evolve while remaining true to essential principles. Heritage's opening exceeded even our most optimistic projections. The educational center quickly established itself as a unique cultural destination that expanded Terroir's mission beyond traditional restaurant boundaries. Our first month of operations brought diverse audiences: culinary enthusiasts seeking hands-on instruction, corporate teams building collaboration through shared food experiences, tourists wanting deeper connection to local food traditions, and families creating intergenerational bonds through cooking classes designed for multiple age groups. The instructional kitchen buzzed with activity from morning until evening. Daytime workshops on everything from hand-pulled noodle techniques to sustainable butchery practices. Afternoon children's programs exploring global food traditions through accessible recipes, and evening events combining educational components with full dining experiences. Our carefully designed curriculum balanced technical skill development with cultural context, ensuring participants gained both practical abilities and deeper appreciation for the traditions behind each technique. Victoria thrived in her expanded role overseeing Heritage's educational programming. Her exceptional organizational skills and genuine passion for cultural preservation through food made her the perfect director for this ambitious extension of our mission. She developed assessment protocols that maintained consistent instructional quality across diverse teaching styles, created progression paths for participants interested in developing skills systematically, and established relationships with cultural institutions that enhanced our programming through collaborative events. Dad's contributions proved equally valuable, though less visible to the public. His systems thinking transformed our operational infrastructure, integrating reservation platforms across restaurant and educational spaces, developing inventory systems that optimized ingredient utilization between culinary programs and restaurant service, and creating data collection frameworks that helped us understand participant preferences and improve offerings accordingly. These behind-the-scenes improvements enabled the seamless guest experience that distinguished Heritage from other culinary education programs. My role evolved significantly with our expansion. While I remained executive chef and final authority on menu development, I now spent considerable time developing curriculum frameworks and training instructors to maintain consistent educational quality across diverse cultural cooking traditions. This expansion of focus brought new creative challenges and professional growth opportunities that continually renewed my passion for our mission. 3 months after Heritage's opening, as we settled into operational rhythms and refined our programming, based on participant feedback, an unexpected email arrived from James Beard Foundation leadership. The message was brief but significant, an invitation to discuss potential collaboration on a national initiative focusing on preservation of immigrant food traditions through community-based education. The opportunity represented potential expansion of Heritage's impact far beyond our Brooklyn location. Rather than making immediate decisions, I scheduled a strategy session with our core leadership team to explore implications and possibilities. The meeting included not just traditional management stakeholders, but representatives from each operational area who could provide perspective on practical implementation challenges. The foundation envisions establishing regional centers based on Heritage's model, I explained, projecting their proposal outline for the team's review. They're suggesting pilot programs in Chicago, Houston, and Los Angeles, with curriculum adapted for each region's specific immigrant communities and food traditions. Miguel, whose culinary expertise had been instrumental in developing our technical instruction frameworks, immediately identified the primary challenge. Authentic representation requires instructors with deep cultural knowledge of specific traditions. Finding qualified people who also have teaching capabilities in multiple regions would be difficult. Victoria nodded in agreement. Our instructor development program took 6 months to establish here with people we already knew had the necessary cultural knowledge. Replicating that across multiple cities would require significant investment in local talent identification and training. Dad approached the whiteboard, seeking silent permission with a glance before diagramming potential organizational structures. There are 3 viable implementation models to consider, he explained with characteristic analytical clarity. First, centralized development with regional execution. We create standardized curriculum and training protocols here, then license to regional partners who implement locally. Second, regional incubation. We embed small teams in each location who develop programming specific to local communities while maintaining core methodological consistency. Third, hub-and-spoke consultation. We establish Heritage as the central knowledge repository while providing advisory services to independently operated regional programs. His systematic breakdown created organizational clarity that enabled more productive discussion of an otherwise overwhelmingly complex opportunity. Sophia built upon his framework with operational considerations for each model, while our finance director outlined different economic implications and sustainability projections. The conversation continued for hours, weighing mission impact against operational constraints, considering resource requirements against available capacity, balancing growth opportunities against preservation of quality standards. Throughout the discussion, I observed my parents' contributions with quiet appreciation for how thoroughly they had integrated into our collaborative leadership culture, offering valuable perspectives without dominating conversation, applying their professional expertise while remaining receptive to insights from staff with different experience backgrounds. After thorough consideration of various implementation approaches, we reached tentative consensus on a measured expansion strategy, beginning with a single pilot program in Houston, where we had existing relationships with potential local partners. This conservative approach would allow us to develop and refine replication methodologies without overextending our resources or compromising quality at our Brooklyn flagship. I'll draft a formal response to the Foundation outlining our proposed approach, I concluded as our meeting ended. Once we have agreement on general structure, we'll develop detailed implementation timelines and resource requirements. As the team dispersed, Victoria lingered behind, clearly wanting private conversation. Once we were alone, she abandoned professional demeanor for more personal expression. Olivia, regardless of how the Foundation collaboration develops, what you've built here is extraordinary, she said with evident pride. Watching diverse people connect through food traditions, seeing the intergenerational knowledge transmission that occurs in our classes. It's profoundly meaningful in ways I never understood during my real estate career. Her observation contained no subtext of parental approval or conditional acceptance, just genuine appreciation from someone who had developed deep understanding of our mission's significance through direct participation. This authentic recognition meant more than any external validation from prestigious culinary institutions or media attention. Your contributions have been instrumental to Heritage's success, I acknowledged, comfortable now with direct appreciation. That would have felt uncomfortable early in our professional reconciliation. Your programming vision and organizational systems created the foundation for potential national expansion. She smiled at the professional acknowledgement, but clearly had something more personal to communicate. This morning, I received a call from Helen Yang, she said, referencing one of their longtime social peers from our former Glenbrook community. She saw the food and wine feature about Heritage and called to reconnect after our changed circumstances. I nodded, understanding the complex social dynamics implicit in this contact. Helen had been among the country club friends my parents had feared disappointing when they rejected my restaurant career. Her reaching out now, after my parents' financial downturn and career reinvention, suggested interesting evolution in these social relationships. She was surprisingly genuine, Victoria continued. No condescension about our changed financial situation, just honest curiosity about our new work. She's visiting New York next month and asked if she could attend one of our classes. The request represented interesting closure to a particular chapter in our family story. The social approval my parents had once prioritized above relationship with their daughter, manifested in concerns about what would Helen Yang think, now returned in unexpected form through Helen's interest in the very enterprise they had originally rejected. We should arrange a special experience, I suggested, professional generosity overcoming any temptation toward petty vindication. Perhaps a private workshop focused on Chinese family recipes reinterpreted through contemporary techniques. It would showcase both cultural heritage preservation and culinary innovation. The suggestion bridged our professional collaboration and personal history, acknowledgement of shared cultural background that transcended our years of estrangement. Victoria's expression reflected appreciation of both the business courtesy and the personal significance in my proposal. I think she'd find that meaningful, she agreed. And perhaps it might open conversation about potential heritage expansion programs with communities like Glenbrook, where immigrant food traditions often get subsumed by suburban assimilation pressures. Her immediate connection of personal, social interaction to potential mission expansion demonstrated how thoroughly she had internalized Heritage's purpose, consistently identifying opportunities to extend cultural preservation through food education into new communities. The woman who had once prioritized social status above all else now viewed former peer relationships primarily as potential avenues for meaningful impact. The following week brought another unexpected connection to our pre-estrangement past. Dr. Lin, the prominent physician whose professional judgment my parents had once feared, made a reservation for Terroir's tasting menu. His name on the reservation list immediately caught my attention, triggering memories of how frequently his hypothetical disapproval had been invoked during arguments about my career choice. Dr. William Lin, Party of 4, 7:30 reservation, I confirmed with Sophia during our pre-service meeting. Is this the same Dr. Lin from Glenwood Medical Group? She checked the reservation notes. Yes, he mentioned being in town for a medical conference and wanting to experience the restaurant he's read about. Special occasion noted as celebrating his daughter's medical school graduation. The symmetry was striking. The physician whose professional achievements had been held as standard, against which my different path was unfavorably compared now, visiting to experience what that different path had created. His daughter had apparently followed the prescribed medical career trajectory my parents had envisioned for me, while I had built something entirely different yet successful by unconventional metrics. I deliberated about how to handle the service. Experience. Professional integrity demanded treating their table with the same exceptional attention we provided all guests. Yet human emotion made me acutely aware of the psychological significance this particular dinner held within our family narrative. When Dr. Lin's party arrived, I made the decision to personally welcome them alongside Sophia, a courtesy we typically extended to first-time guests with special occasions rather than specific recognition of his identity. His expression registered surprised recognition as I approached their table. "Ms. Chen? Olivia Chen?" he asked with evident astonishment. "Raymond and Victoria's daughter?" "Yes," I confirmed with professional warmth that masked more complex emotions. "Welcome to Terroir. Congratulations on your daughter's medical school graduation, a significant achievement worth celebrating." His gaze traveled around the restaurant, taking in the thoughtfully designed space, the seamless service choreography, the subtle evidence of success and recognition displayed in framed reviews and awards. His expression shifted from surprise to genuine interest. "I've read about your restaurant in several publications," he acknowledged. "Though I didn't connect the name with Raymond's daughter. This is quite an establishment you've built." "Thank you," I replied simply. "We're particularly proud of our commitment to cultural storytelling through food traditions. Your server will explain our tasting menu concept, which features dishes that honor immigrant culinary heritage while incorporating contemporary techniques and local ingredients." Throughout their dinner, I observed from a professional distance as they experienced our thoughtfully crafted menu and service. Their evident enjoyment, captured in empty plates, animated conversation about flavor profiles, and enthusiastic interaction with our staff's dish explanations provided unexpected satisfaction. Not vindication, exactly, but rather affirmation. That meaningful achievement transcends conventional career categories. After their dessert course, Dr. Lin asked to speak with me briefly. When I approached their table, his expression conveyed thoughtful reconsideration rather than mere social courtesy. "This was truly exceptional," he said with genuine appreciation. "Not just the food itself, but the educational component. How each dish connects to specific cultural traditions while creating something distinctly contemporary. You've clearly built something significant here." "Thank you," I acknowledged sincerely. "That cultural preservation through culinary innovation is central to our mission." He hesitated briefly before adding, "I understand your parents are now involved in your operation. Victoria mentioned something about educational programming when we spoke recently." The comment revealed ongoing social connection I hadn't been aware of, suggesting my parents maintained certain relationships from their previous life, despite dramatically changed circumstances. Dr. Lin's acknowledgement of their current work indicated both his awareness of their financial reversal and an absence of the social judgment they had once feared from peers like him. "Yes, they're integral to our expanded educational center heritage," I confirmed. "My mother directs our programming development while my father manages our operational systems. Their contributions have been invaluable to our growth." His expression reflected genuine interest, rather than the condescension my parents had anticipated when imagining such conversations years earlier. "Remarkable how life creates unexpected journeys," he observed. My daughter has just completed medical school as I hoped, yet my son recently left his law practice to establish a nonprofit focusing on food justice issues. These divergent paths seem increasingly common in this generation. The comment contained multifaceted significance, acknowledgement that prescribed professional trajectories weren't universally embraced even among families like his, recognition that meaningful contribution takes diverse forms across generations, and implicit validation that paths like mine represented legitimate alternatives rather than disappointing deviations. As their party prepared to depart, Dr. Lin handed me his business card with a note written on the back. Please share this contact information with your parents. It's been too long since we've connected properly, and I'd be genuinely interested in learning more about their current work. The simple gesture represented unexpected closure to a particular narrative thread in our family story. The professional, peer whose hypothetical judgment had factored so prominently in my parents' rejection of my career choice, now expressed authentic interest in the enterprise we had built together, despite our dramatically different path. When I shared the interaction with my parents the following day, their reaction revealed how thoroughly their values had transformed. Rather than expressing relief at social acceptance from their former peer, they focused on the potential mission-aligned opportunity his interest presented. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.